Thanksgiving is a beautiful time to be with those you love. Turkey and all the trimmings abound. Laughter is shared, the pigskin is passed, and naps are at their best. Since 1621, this has been a time in America to celebrate life's good harvest. Many of us no longer have to harvest our own food, but there is another harvest we should all participate in. Take this time to collect in your heart all the people and the moments you have had in your life this year that you can be thankful for. What do you think of? Your family? Your friends? Having a place to call home? Your job? Your health? Or just the simple fact that you woke up this morning and you are here, right now? These are all good gifts that come from one place: God. Often we can forget to thank Him for being the source of all the blessing we receive in our lives. Psalm 106:1 says, "Praise the Lord. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His love endures forever." As you reap the harvest of blessings God has given you, take a moment, this moment, to thank God. Why? Because He is good and His love endures forever.
we just did things just a tad different this morning, if you couldn't tell. All right, let's all stand and turn to 546 if you like, and it's Love Lifted Me. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, sinking to rise no more. But the master of the sea heard my despairing cry. From the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. All my heart to Him I give, ever to Him I cling. In His blessed presence live, ever His praises sing. Love so mighty and so true merits my soul's best song. Faithful, loving service to Him belongs. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Souls in danger, look above. Jesus completely saves. He will lift you by His love out of the angry waves. He's the master of the sea, billows His will obey. He, your Savior, wants to be saved today. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me.
Page of music, everybody up. Now we're going to have a word of prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much. Such a poor job, Lord. Privilege, Lord, to have, Lord, we just how are all you sinners in here today? The reaction is, who doesn't believe they are? So we don't. Our job is to go out into the world about what we have. Sometimes we sort of take down if people don't come. I didn't mean to take up and speaker date. Also on mission is gain a few pounds while you're done. Second kickoff of Lottie. That's up in there. We make December 2nd kick. I see. I done coffee cakes for the Baptist children. Also having a church Christmas party. Character comes out. Heard it. Yeah, they Lucas. Line up sheet in the back for church family. I appreciate of difficulty. Sorry if I have missed any. $6 o'clock, that is right. Apple. So eat your snack. Friday. Good. Well, everybody smile and let's.
You're pretty much right, because I'm cooking all day, so I mean, more the merry. I think you have plenty of places to go. All right, let's do the Lily of the Valley. If you like the book, it's 189. right, trust, and obey. All stand. Oh, sorry. Just a closer walk with thee. I'm just looking at the wrong side. I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk. Let me walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Through this world of toil and snares, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who will be my burden shares? None but thee, dear Lord, none but thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Great Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. When my feeble life is o'er, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, safely on to thy kingdom shore, to thy shore. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be.
Words today.
want to do something just so much to be thankful for. Take our hymn books, but they like, and we're going to all stand and sing. Peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll. Whatever, my Lord, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trial should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ has regarded my helpless estate, and hath shed his own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. My sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not import, but the whole is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when the face shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, then the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul.
Morning, how are y'all? Turn with me to Daniel chapter 3. Daniel 3. I'm going to continue in our study there, the great butts of the Bible. If you hadn't been here, you did hear great butts of the Bible. Last week we talked about Butt Daniel. Didn't get an opportunity to really finish and kind of finish up last Sunday night. And since we're not having an evening service here, they told me I could preach for 2 hours, however long it took. Or I'm just kidding. Some of y'all looked at me. I wasn't ever coming back. Anyway, while you're turning to Daniel 3, let me say this. I kind of got a little bit of an update. I talked to Bobby Parker last night and was really kind of expecting to hear Myra up there in Birmingham. I spoke with him last night, and as long as he can hold his O2 levels up on his own for a 4-hour period, they're going to release him. Well, Bobby said that he was laughing and playing kind of today and Friday some, and the first time he had done that. But we'll better. Pray for, of course, for Clay, and Bobby said, it's hard for me to sit there, watch all these doctors and nurses work on him, and I just got to say, Dad, I can understand that. Father, being a husband, hurt when your wife is hurt. Us men, we just want to put our hands on it and fix it. That's what God wired us, and sometimes it's out of our hands, and it's in trust Him, and that's what Bobby was asking, if I'd pray with him and pray for him, help and just help him trust. So before we get started this morning, that's what I want to do. I want to pray not only for the service this morning, but I also want to pray for Bobby and Myra. So let's. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to preach your word. I pray, God, that the message that comes out today is yours. Mine. It's nothing else but your word, and have prepared hearts of those here this morning. Not fall on deaf ears, Lord. Act on their life, that help them understand you are in your entirety, much more walked in here, Father. Help me to be bold. God, we come to you. So often we come to you with our needs. Bobby and his family and the things going on there. We pray that your hand be in it. Doctors as they work on him, and Father, just that healing touch. That I'm thankful too. All the blessings that you give, mercy. Most of all, just as we turn Daniel 3, we like I said, we kind of just continue in our study a little bit there, and I'm just going to kind of pick up right there in verse 1, and been really, really excited about the message. I knew probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, I told you I don't really tell Andrea what I've been dying here with her, just because it's been building up in me for so long, and it feels like it's about to bust out of me. So I'm very excited about the message, and I hope it has the same impact on you that it's had on me. I'm going to start reading in Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. And then as I come across the things that God gave me, we'll talk about them. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. Okay? In modern day terms, if you put those measurements into place, this image that he had constructed was about 9 or 10 stories tall. Okay? About 90 feet, about 100 feet tall, and not nearly as wide, but just a tall idol set there in the plain of Dura, all right, where everyone would come and worship. So Nebuchadnezzar The Babylonians are the chief world superpower at this time. Everyone's kind of under Nebuchadnezzar's control. And not only, like we saw last week, we pointed out a lot of things that Nebuchadnezzar was trying to do and control the people in which he had conquered. He did it through brainwashing them, and did through all these other stuff. They're going to serve his gods, the gods that he serves, so on and so forth. And he wanted everyone to have the corporate worship. Okay? It was forced upon them. You're going to worship the gods that I worship. And so he set up this large image. And it's not very clear whether this image was of himself, to make himself like a god. There are some clues that kind of indicate that, or if it was just one of the Babylonian gods, maybe the god of the sun, maybe the god of the moon. The Bible isn't really specifically clear on that part, but we do know, nonetheless, it's an idol. Okay? It's an idol. So he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 2, sent to gather the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Verse 3, then the satraps, prefects, governors, counselors, treasurers, the justices, magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that he had set up. Verse 4, and the herald proclaimed aloud, you are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning, fiery furnace. And that was just the Babylonians' preferred method of execution. Okay? Every culture, as it came up through time, had a preferred method of how they would execute criminals and those that they thought were worthy of capital offenses. Of course, the Jews, they stoned people. Okay? Hebrews did. It's in the Bible. Okay? They stoned people. Of course, the Babylonians is through the fiery furnace. The Romans, of course, was through crucifixion. All right? Now, that was their preferred method of execution. Verse 7, therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So they didn't really have a choice. They were told, this is what you'll do or you'll die. Okay? And we don't face those same kinds of instructions in our life, but there are some principles that we can draw that we see in everyday life to this same thing. Imagine that, okay? In a big plain, in a big plateau, all these people gather around, and here, and we're going to get to it in a minute, those three boys are standing right there, and everybody else bows down and they stand up. They refuse to bow down. Therefore, at the time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. Verse 9, they declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. Verse 12, there are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Sound like they might be a little bit jealous of them? They absolutely are. What does it say in chapter 1 that we covered last week? God showed them men favor, didn't they? They did because God stood up for them. And it's because they were foreigners. Don't you think that angered some of the Babylonians that were close to Nebuchadnezzar, that were native Chaldeans, okay, of the same tribe of Nebuchadnezzar? And they said, look, man, you've set these people, these invaders, these foreigners, you've set them over the affairs of the provinces of this nation, all right, and they don't even worship. They don't do what you tell them to do. They're being defiant. They're being disobedient. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these men, O king, they pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And I got three questions for you today. I broke this sermon down in three little ways. And the first question I'm going to ask you is what gods do you worship? Look there at verse 12, and it says right there, they do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you set up. My question to you is, what gods do you worship? If the people you work with, think about this. These men work, they're being maliciously accused, okay, it says in verse 8, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. If you were maliciously accused of being a Christian, there'd be enough evidence to convict you. Your co-workers, if you were being put on trial for being a Christian, because that's what's happening right here. These guys are being put on trial right there in front of everyone for being Christians, for standing up for God. If people that you're around every day, whether it be at school, at work, or wherever it is that you spend most of your time, if those other people, not the people you go to church with, the people you're around every day, the outside world, if you were accused of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Psalm 135, Psalm 135, verses 15 through 18. Listen, it hit me when I was going through this and putting this sermon together. You know, we're built for worship. We're built for it. Not just Christians, not just Jews, not just those that we think are maybe called by God or this or that and other. No, we all are. We were built that way. That's the way God made every single one of us. And the Bible tells us this. My question to you is, what are you going to worship? What are you going to serve? Are you going to serve the God of heaven? And we'll get there in just a minute. Or are you going to serve the idols that are in this world? It says in verse 15 of Psalm 135, the idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of humans' hands. The work of humans' hands. They have mouths, but do not speak. They have eyes, but do not see. They have ears, but do not hear. Nor is there any breath in their mouths. Those who make them become like them. All those who and as I read that psalm, it stands out to me. I know that we're built. We're built to worship. Even those that claim to be atheists, that say that they don't believe in a God, or those that are worshiping false gods that we know of in other religions like Islam and all those sorts of things, that we're all built to worship. There's no doubt about it. And my question is what do or who do you worship? Who do you worship? Is it the idols? And it's easy to point at bad idols. It's easy to sit back and look and say, well, there's materialism, there's sex addictions and pornography and all this other stuff, homosexuality, sex, drugs, alcohol. We see those idols, and those are easy to pick out. And most of us in this room are going to say, well, I don't have those sorts of problems. Or all you worship is what we call some good idols. You put your family before God. What does God say about that? What did Jesus say about that? It said you ought to hate your mother and father as compared to the relationship and where you hold me in your life. It should look like hate. That should be the difference. What about kids? Do we not live in the most kid-centric society that you have ever seen? I mean, heaven forbid that we tell a kid no these days. They might cry. Lord. I mean, and they will, and sometimes they're going to have to deal with what no means, okay? It is so easy. God, I mean, praise Jesus, right? I mean, just we know at our house, it's a lot easier to say, here, have it, just go. Go. It is like a circus in our house. Anytime, if y'all ever come to our house, ever, which I'm not like, bring some earplugs or you bring some popcorn and just watch the show. I mean, because it's easier to do it that way. Or just go on a trip with us somewhere. I mean, you can't, I know they're not going to be little very long, and I get that. We've got some unique perspective in having two older children, having two young moments. But it would be great if I could just, time to go somewhere. When we leave our house, I feel like we're never coming back for all the stuff we have, okay? Diaper bags, cups, pacifiers, like all these things that you got to have because you got small children and all this stuff. I mean, I feel like we're packing, like we're going on a vacation. Like to her mama's house or something. It's wild. But anyway, we don't normally look at those things, and they're not bad. It's not bad, okay, to be a good parent. All right? I'm not saying that. But I'm saying when your kids, okay, and the activities that they do and all these other things, when they become, and I'll get into sports here in just a minute, Lord, when those come before your relationship with God, that's an idol. It's period. That's what the Bible calls it. It's an idol. And it looks different than it did right here, okay? None of us are setting up, nine-story images in our backyards and going out there and worshiping, okay? But I want to give you a picture of something, okay? If you go to a foreign nation, and one that sticks out to me the most is like India, okay? And those that have what we would consider, what we look at as like idols, okay? In Hinduism, okay, and in Buddhism, they have actual idols, like little caricatures that they carry around with them and stuff like that. They'll pull them out of their pockets and rub on them and pray to them throughout the day and all this. I've seen it, okay? And they do that. And if you go in their homes, all right, if you go in their homes, this is what they have. They would have an image, and it might be as big as this right here, or it might be smaller, but they have it in the center of their living room, and their couches and their little bean bags and rugs and everything they sit around the front of that idol right there, and that's where they sit and worship that idol. It don't look much different from our living rooms, only that there's not an idol right there, there's a television set. Quiet in here on that one. I was sitting in front of one yesterday. Some of y'all. I didn't panic when Alabama was playing yesterday. Okay, I never panicked, but I mean, according to the metrics that we saw yesterday, the second best team in college football is that little old college out there in South Carolina. Halftime with the best team in the country. Anyway, they played them better in the first half than anybody else has this year. Anyway, but that in itself becomes an idol. I did something yesterday afternoon for the first time that I've gotten to do since last year. Anybody go sit in the tree stand yesterday? And even like leading up to it, Andrea had been asking me, she said, when's... I told her, I don't really feel, I had a whole lot going on. I had other things, and it just, the itch hadn't gotten there yet. It just hadn't really set in. I said, I ain't even no way, shape, or form prepared. I ain't talked to her brothers who kind of manage the food plots and everything out there, and you want to talk about a blessing as far as hunting goes. And all I got to do is show up and hunt. Blessing. Anyway, but I hadn't talked to them. I hadn't done anything. Hadn't got my clothes out of the storage shed, or I hadn't done any of that stuff. Well, I come home and done it Friday afternoon, and I got to go sit. Yesterday, didn't see anything. Didn't really. And it was quiet, and mentioned the circus. I got to go out of the house and sit and be quiet and all these other things. And if I'm not careful during this time of year, all right, two things might creep up in the way of my relationship with the Lord. The first is I ain't got but two hobbies in this whole world. Two. Two. And one of them, I like watching Alabama play football. I mentioned something going on December the 1st. Anyway, she said, okay. And she was cool with it, yeah. And then that's one thing that it might become an idol, okay? I'm just being transparent and honest with you, all right? It also might make me sin, cussing and all. I'm just kidding. Y'all probably more spiritual than that. The other thing for me that might become an idol is hunting, okay? And one of the reasons is, I got responsibilities at school. I've got responsibilities with our basketball team and all this other stuff, and it comes during this time. So I feel like when I have the opportunity, I should go. Well, sometimes I see the state of my family and my house, okay, and what kind of day or week my wife's been having, and it might not be a very smart thing for me to do to go hunting on Saturday morning. Or if I got a sermon to write, or I ain't really been into work because I ain't had the time to get in there and write the things down and do what I need to do that week. I mean, if I'm going out and spending time in the woods rather than doing what God asked me to do, okay, and spend time with Him, it's become an idol. There's nothing inherently evil about going and hunting deer. There's nothing inherently evil, depending on who you ask, about Alabama football. Okay? There's nothing inherently evil about those things. There's nothing inherently evil about being a good parent. But if it's coming before your relationship with Jesus Christ, then you got to move it. The overarching, priority when your feet hit the floor in the morning is, what can I do to expand His kingdom today? That should be it. That should be our number one priority. Psalm 29, verse 2 says, ascribe to the Lord the glory due His name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of holiness. Worship Him. That's what our lives should be, is a picture of worship. I mentioned this the other night, last Sunday night when I was talking about Isaiah. Those are some of the richest verses in the Bible that I can think of. Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. And that was when God called Isaiah to be a prophet. And he describes what he saw right there as he stood before the Lord. And those beasts I was talking about, they had 6 wings. Two of the wings covered his face, and 2 covered his feet, and with the other 2, that's why he was flying around. Why was he covering his face? Because that magnificent, angelic beast that was standing before the Lord, that's much higher than I am, said, I'm not worthy to be seen in front of the Lord of Lords and the host of hosts. I'm not worthy. And what was that beast saying? He was saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with His glory. He's worthy of our praise. He's worthy of our worship. Him and Him alone. And that's it. And let me just say that our lives should be a picture of that. And I want to say this. I've always had this saying, and some people get it right off, and sometimes you got to think about it. Behavior follows belief. Behavior follows belief. People are going to know. You can say all day long that I'm a Christian, or I'm this, or I have this title. I'm a deacon. I'm a Sunday school teacher. I sing in the choir. I do this. You can say all that you want to. But people are going to know who you serve and who you belong to and what you really believe by the way you act every day. That's how they're going to know it. Behavior follows belief. It ought not to even be a question. And people will say this, about me, and I know because I've been picked at like this, and it's not easy to deal with. It's not easy to deal with sometimes. But he's one of them Bible-thumping, crazy Christians. And I want to ask him, is there any other kind? Should there be? No. The way we live our lives as believers should make non-believers question their disbelief in God. I'm going to say that one more time. The way we live our lives as believers should make non-believers question their disbelief in God. They should look at us and say, I want that. Whatever it is you got, I want. That's the way that we should live our lives. And here's the thing, I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed tonight. All right? This evening, this afternoon, we're not guaranteed any of it. So this may be the last sermon that I ever preach. And that's the way that I have to prepare when I come up here. Because ultimately, and I'm not being ugly, I don't care what y'all think. I don't care if y'all think I'm crazy, all right? I really don't. I want the God of heaven, the Lord of hosts, to know that He's worthy of my worship. That's what I want Him to know. Are the people that you're around every day, are they aware of that? Ask yourself. I had an interesting, Brother Gary Winstead at I Know, he's told this story a couple of times from the pulpit, and it really stood out to me. When he was a bivocational pastor, I don't know if he was at I Know at this time. He may have been, I'm not sure. Early in his ministry, or early in life, when he was in ministry, he was a bivocational pastor, and he worked at stocking the shelves and doing that. That was his job, and then he worked. At one time, someone from his church came in about what was going on at church and all this other stuff, and the person left, and on their way out, they were talking to one of Brother Gary's co-worker of Brother Gary came to him and said, that'll preach right there, won't it? Said he was never, the conviction he felt from that was, tremendous weight on his shoulder, knowing that he wasn't spreading the gospel right there in his workplace. So are the people you're around every day, are they aware of that? Ask yourself, could the people maliciously accuse you? Could they? We're going to pick up right where we left off here in verse 13. So they're being accused now by those people for a lot of reasons. They were jealous of them, all these other things. And he said, these men, they pay no attention to you. They don't serve your gods or worship the golden image you set up. Verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, is this true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, and all those other instruments, I'm going to fall down and worship the image that I have made. Well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall be immediately cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God that will be able to deliver you out of my hands? And so he says, this is what we're going to do. Is this true? Is this true what they're saying about you? And he said, you know what? Don't even answer if it's true. We're going to have a test right now. When those instruments start playing, I'm going to see who it is that you worship. And I think it's really easy to sit back and look at the courage that was given here. But, I mean, you got to think, these guys, is there still a sense of fear that's going on inside them? I believe so. I don't care who you are, all right? When death is, and I've had death stare me right in the face more than one time, okay? I have. And a lot of it was back when I was living like I was living before God got a hold of me, and I've shared that. But I've had death stare me right in the face, and I don't care what's going on in your life. There's still going to be some sort of sense, some butterflies in the stomach, something going on right there. All right? And here is the most powerful being on earth. The most powerful human being that was alive at that time was Nebuchadnezzar. He's asking those young men, I'm going to ask you one more time, who is it that you're going to worship? Are you going to worship me? Or are you going to continue to stick to your gods? Because I'm telling you right now, you might think he's your God. That's what he said right there in verse 15. He asked, who is the God? That was more of a smart-aleck, sarcastic, kind of rhetorical question. You think you got a God that you're going to worship? He can't deliver you from me. I can tell you that right now. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this. He said, you don't even have to play that music, man. We don't need to answer you. And he said, this is it right here, verse 17. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. In other words, my God is able. You might think that my God's not able, but I'm here to tell you because I've seen what he's done in my life. I can tell you testimony after testimony where he stood before me and he was there for me. He said, my God is able and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Here's our great butt of the Bible today. Verse 18. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. But if not. He is able, verse 17, but if not. There's our great butt of the Bible, verse 18. And here's my question concerning those verses right there. My first question to you was what gods do you worship? Could people maliciously accuse you? My second question, is he enough for you? Job chapter 13, verse 15. We know the story of Job very, very well. And I think it takes some of us to come back and just think about what Job was doing. God took everything from him. Everything. His money, and he was a very, very wealthy man. His money, his house, his children, okay? You can take my money in my house, all right? But I can't even begin to wrap my mind around we got friends that lost children, young children. Talk about fears you have. I don't know how I would respond to something. I know how I would supposed to respond. How do you deal with that? Not only did the man lose his children, he lost his house, he lost his money, he lost everything. Then he lost his health. He comes down with this sickness, and he's got these boils all over his body. And these people are coming around him, and they're basically accusing him of being a sinner, hiding sin from everyone. You claim to be some righteous man, Job, but you must be hiding something, because this don't happen to people who praise the name of the Lord. What have you done, Job? Job said this in chapter 13, verse 15. Though he slay me, I will hope in him. Though he slay me, I will trust in him. In other words, he's done all this to me. If he takes my life, guess what? I'm still going to praise his name. Still going to praise his name. When he doesn't live up to our earthly expectations, are we still going to praise him? We're going to trust him still? When he doesn't answer our prayers the way that we want them answered, are we still going to praise him? God ever answered a prayer for you that you don't like the way he answered it? He's not an errand boy. Made him your errand boy, he's probably not very good at it. Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9 are verses that we know very, very well. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than earth, my ways are higher than your ways, my thoughts than your thoughts. Got a perspective. Down there on the sidelines on Friday night, and this is top high school or anywhere. Got some coaches down there on the sideline, but we got some other coaches. They up top. Got headsets on because they can see better than we. Why? Love us. See things a whole lot better than we can. He knows all. He knows what's good for us. We think we know what's good for us, but ultimately, he knows what's good for us. And he says that, my thoughts are not your thoughts, or neither are my ways or your ways, declares the Lord. And I got to ask you something. Is that good enough for you? Is that good enough for you? You going to trust him still? Let me explain something to you. When he doesn't answer the prayers the way that we want them answered, I got news for you, and I'm not being ugly. This is just biblical right here. He don't owe us anything. He owes us nothing. Nothing. He is the God of this universe, and he does not owe me. He don't owe me nothing. He don't owe me the next breath. He don't owe none of it to me. Job chapter 41, verse 11, he says, who is given to me first that I should repay him? Who? Who's given to me first? When we get a bad report from the doctor, if we lose our job, if we lose a family member, if that prodigal won't turn from their wicked ways, when God chooses not to move the mountain, when life just gets tough for whatever reason, is it well? Is it well with your soul? Sometimes the music just kind of lines up with the messages. I was putting this message out the week. Out by putting it in. But I want to ask you, when those prayers don't get answered the way that we want them to, when there's a sickness in the family, we're praying for healing, and God takes that person. God calls him up. Are we going to be all right with that? Well, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul's talking about some things that God has shown him. Paul, he goes into some detail about being called up into the third heaven. He actually speaking in the third person. He actually doesn't even put it out there unless you knew some context behind that. You might not even understand kind of what he's saying there in chapter 12. But at the beginning of chapter 12, he talks about, I knew a man once who got called up into the third heaven, into paradise, and God showed him some things and so on and so forth. He's talking about himself. Okay? Paul saw some things with his own two eyes that none of us will ever see this side of heaven. He was shown that for a reason. It was so he could, I mean, the man wrote most of the New Testament, okay? Here's the thing. I told y'all, what is the biggest thing that I struggle with more than anything? Pride, okay? It's pride. We get done, I get done preaching, and I stand here during the invitation. I go back there, and on your way out, y'all love on me, and y'all encourage me, and I don't want y'all to stop doing that, you know. But I got to get in the car from the moment that I leave here until I come back Sunday night. And I have to leave, when I do it Sunday night, I have to leave here from the moment I leave here until I come back the following week. And remember, that is him and it ain't me. Him. I don't want you to stop encouraging me, but it gets in my way, okay? And I'd have to imagine if God called me up to the third heaven and revealed things to me that he didn't reveal to the rest of humanity, I might get a little, you know, popping my suspenders, you know, kind of walking around thinking that I got something that you guys don't. And that's what Paul was talking about here in Corinthians, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. He talks about being called up into the third heaven and God showing him these things. And in verse 7 he says, so to keep me from being conceited. Right? We had a conversation about that, right? I was giving my wife a hard time. I was giving her, I think she. But we was kind of going back and forth a little bit. And I think April said, you know, there's a fine line between confidence and conceit. All over it all day long. That's one of my issues. But Paul was saying the same thing right here. He said, to keep me from being conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, keep me from being conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. And here's the verse up here. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And then he says in verse 10, for the sake of Christ then, I am content with weakness. I am content with weakness. Can we be content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities? For when I am weak, I am strong. He gave us his Son, his only begotten Son, that we, while we were yet worst, die in our place. Don't owe us anything beyond it. Is it enough? Is he enough for you? You know, song, actually, you know, breaking tradition a little bit. Song, and I'm going to read some of the lyrics of it. It's by Mercy Me. It's called Even. Y'all may have heard it. If you haven't, I highly suggest you go on YouTube and look at it, not just for the video, but the singer, a little background about this, the singer, a couple of times in his life, he was being held to the flame, so his own life, and he says this, he says, they say sometimes you win some and sometimes you lose, and right now I'm losing bad. I've stood on this stage night after night reminding the broken it'll be all right. Right now, oh right now, I just can't. Easy to sing when there's nothing to bring me down, but what will I say when I'm held to the flame like I am right now? Then he says this, I know you're able and I know you can to save through the fire with your mighty hand, but even if you don't, I can't, since God implanted this message in me, I can't listen to that song. I've heard it 100 times prior. But it just, this is the, and this, I got the idea, guys. Andrew and I, and I said it's in Daniel. And I knew that. I mean, it was head knowledge, but I hadn't felt it, you know, like that. That's when God began to grow this message in me was that very moment we were in the car. I said it's based on Daniel 3. He says, I know you're able and I know you can to save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. So my question to you is the hope still going to be in him if he don't pull you out that fire? Held to the flame, can you see? I'm finishing up now. I'm going to get to the end of our story here. I'm going to get to the end and be finished. Then Nebuchadnezzar, verse 19, was filled with fury, and the expression on his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Because the king's order was urgent and the furnace was overheated, the flame of the fire killed the men who took them. These 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. The men that threw them in were burned up. That's how hot the fire was. And then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, this is true, O king. He answered and said, but I see 4 men, praise God, unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. Jesus Christ showed up right on time. My God is able. That's what those boys said. My God is able. And if not, it don't matter. We're going to spend eternity with him anyway. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then they came out of the fire, verse 27. Everybody looked and saw that the fire had no power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed. Hey guys, y'all ever grilling something on the grill and the fire gets hot and you lose a little arm hair or something like that? Yeah? Or you get too close down to it, you might lose some facial hair if you get too close to it. The hair on their bodies was not even singed off. Their cloaks were not harmed. They didn't even smell like fire. Okay? Didn't even smell like fire. I came out of the woods yesterday evening and wanted to get a shower and get done, and I thought, man, I grilled some chicken last night, and I thought, well, it's going to be really stupid for me to take a shower before I grill. I grilled my chicken first because I didn't want to smell like what? Like a grill. Yeah, I don't want to smell like fire. All right? These boys were thrown into a fire that was so hot it killed the men that threw them in, and they didn't even smell like smoke. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. My last question to you is, are you willing to yield up your body? Romans 12:1 says to present your body a living sacrifice. I'm going to define sacrifice for you. Sacrifice is or destruction of something prized or desirable for the as having a higher or more pressing. Giving up something that you love for a higher claim. Willing to sacrifice ourselves. Has your relationship with Jesus cost you anything? One of the most unpopular verses in the Bible. Whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. I had a lot more to say on that, but obviously short on time. That's my questions to you this morning. Questions to you this morning. Do they maliciously accuse you? Know that that's who you are. That's who you are. Those are the gods that you serve. Be enough for you. My other question is have you presented yourself as a sacrifice? John's going to play. I don't know if he's going. As the video plays, in lieu of us singing a hymn, I'd like everybody to stand, and we'll recognize this as our invitation time. If you've got something you need some prayer about, I'm up front here. I can pray with you. If you don't know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, come down here and we can talk about it. I'll pray with you. Open these altars up, and just listen to the words about even if you don't. My hope is you alone. I pray that that's how we view our relationship with.
They say sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. And right now I'm losing bad. I've stood on this stage night after night, reminding the broken it'll be alright. But right now, oh right now, I just can't. It's easy to say when there's nothing to bring me down. But what will I say when I'm held to the flame like I am right now? I know you're able and I know you can. See through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. They say it only takes a little faith to move a mountain. Well, good thing, a little faith is all I have right now. God, when you choose to leave mountains unmovable, oh, give me the strength to be able to sing. It is well with my soul. I know you're able and I know you can. Save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow and I know the hurt would all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. You've been faithful, you've been good all of my days. Jesus, I will cling to you, come what may, 'cause I know you're able, I know you can. I know you're able, and I know you can. Save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow, I know the hurt would all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you it is well with my soul.
Remember, we'll be at First Baptist Zion Chapel for joint service at 6 o'clock tonight.